you have a path to cross, and there's two islands. And between that island, those two islands is the sea. The same way that you would use a boat to cross that river, you use the Dharma to cross that river of how to liberate yourself from suffering. But the same way that once you get to the other side of the river or the other side of the sea, would you then carry that boat on your back because it was so useful for you up until then? Well, the answer is no, because the boat is for the water. The same way that the Dharma is just for this. And there's another story that links this, again, one of my favorite stories, where the Buddha goes out into the forest with all the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus is the name for monks in the Pali Canon. And it's autumn, so some of the leaves are falling off the trees. And he picks up a handful of these leaves and he says, "What's greater, monks, these leaves or the forest?" And the monks, they all say, "Well, it's the forest, blessed one." And the Buddha looks down at the leaves and he looks back up at them and he says, "But this is all I teach, monks. This is all I teach."
Wow.
And I think that speaks to exactly what you were saying. You know, at some
Yeah.
point, even the attachment to the path or the ideas holds you back. So
Yeah.
the idea of self-improvement, self-development,
Mm.
self-actualization, right? All at some point, they're so helpful until they're not. Do you know what characterized this period for me, actually? Was us getting sister from the hospital in Poland to the hospice in
Mm.
Budapest. And this sounds so ridiculous. I remember we were looking at like options to like get her airlifted out of there, if you remember.
Crazy. And it
Yeah,
was like 20K, like
yeah,
$20,000 or something like that.
yeah.
Maybe even more, 30,000. It was insane.
Something ridiculous. But then luckily what kind of clinched it for this period was we found that really, really good hospice in Budapest. Um, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we can do that. No worries."
Yeah. They're like, no
Yeah,
worries, we'll sort it.
yeah,
Easy.
yeah. I never thought, I mean, I want to get your thoughts on this. Like that hospice experience, like going in there, like I think that kind of defines that year in Budapest, at least for me in my mind, that I experienced. But what was it like for you? We talked about all like the fun times, but now we're getting into the winter of Budapest, which was also the winter in the business that we were a part of. And winter, I guess, in terms of not our practices, we were going pretty hard, but what was that period like for you?
Well, I mean, we had to go pretty hard in my practices
Yeah, yeah,
to
we did.
manage the kind of stress that I think we were both feeling,
Mm,
and probably Pierre too.
yeah.
And what I remember most about that period is actually when Sister finally got to Budapest, which was really wonderful. And
Mm,
then me and you would do that walk from where we lived
mm,
all the way pretty much to
yeah.
the hospice because
Yeah.
for whatever reason at that time the train line we needed just decided nope, we're under
Yeah.
construction for a bit.
Yeah.
The only
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
And I just remember, UK, we're both from the UK, of course,
Yeah.
is cold during winter time, but it's kind of a wet cold. It's like not a nice cold. But
Mm.
Budapest was a freezing cold, a
Ah,
cold where you're like, oh, this is actually like too much. This is hurting going outside on my
yeah.
face,
Super
you know?
windy as well, I remember.
Oh,
Just like,
extremely windy as well. Yeah.
yeah. And that walk that we went through, it was like all the wind just got like funneled. Like this is just me
Mm.
and Cameron ranting about that time period because it's so annoying to think about. To most people, it's like what a first world problem.
Yeah.
But when you get outside of this like this the train station to walk down to see where sister is because we would obviously check in with her, you know, keep her company, all that kind of stuff. You just get like this massive like gale force wind just like blowing you backwards as you're walking over there. And it was also getting super dark and super depressing. And then like stress was coming up and because there was all this stuff like the business was barely hanging on, all that kind of thing. And we were meditating throughout all of it. And this is actually where I think is when, at least for me, I really started hitting the limitations of just using meditation and the coaching frameworks at this point that we had access to. Because instead of it like actually making lemonade out of lemons, it was just mitigating the sourness of the lemons in this, hastily put together
Mm.
analogy, rather than actually like still allowing you to have fullness, happiness, and fulfillment in life. Was that the same for
Yeah.
you, or did you have a different relation to that?
I think that relationship for me started to become a little bit later. I
Yeah.
think the reason being is that I wasn't looking at it so much
Mm,
because I was just needing it. I
right.
needed the meditation, I needed the kind of hypnotherapy work that we were doing.
Mm,
And so I was really clinging to it at that time. And
yeah.
it gave me the power in many ways to like keep going through what was challenging, both
Mm,
in the business, trying to make that work, but not feeling like there's a lot of power that a lot of impact we could have.
yeah.
And then also, going through a situation where we, I think at this point, we had spent months with sister, like every single day,
Yeah.
and you have a real care for this
Yeah.
person. And so you're both battling that experience of seeing her decline at
Mm,
times, in the hospice, the
yeah.
stress of managing that, of actually having, you had it more in that specific scenario, actually, where you've got to communicate with the organization Dhamasuka that
Yeah.
was supporting Sister, the hospice people, us, and
Mm,
allow that to connect so could actually support her in that situation. So you have the stress, you have the kind of the sadness and the challenge of going through this situation with someone towards the end of their experience of life.
yeah.
And the person that we had kind of relied upon in some ways for months and months as the leader was a world away. We were in
Yeah.
Budapest, he was in Mexico.
Yeah.
And because of that, he was also in a completely different time zone. So
Yeah.
our access, even virtually, was less.
Yeah.
And because of that, just naturally, the guidance was a little bit less.
Yeah.
And so it was a period of just every single day was like, all right, just got to get through it a little bit.
Do you know what it was
It
like?
was kind of back to that.
It
Go
was
on.
like in The Hobbit when Gandalf goes away for a bit and they have to
Oh,
figure
yeah.
things out on their own, you know. But
Yeah.
luckily, he'd laid the foundations for us to actually be able to handle that, luckily. That's why it's so important
Yeah.
to not become reliant on your guide or your mentor. And normally it's actually, or the experience, it's actually on, I would say, the responsibility of the guide or the mentor to
Mm.
have that initiation period, actually, to
Yeah.
plan ahead for that.
Yeah.
It's actually something to look at is like almost like I'm not sure why I'm getting into this. I think it's because this is something which I say to everyone. Make sure that whoever you're learning from and whatever you're learning from, they the system that you're learning from or the person that you're learning from has built into whatever they're teaching you the fact that you're going to get stress tested on your own
Mm.
and that they're not always going to be there to help pick up the pieces. I would say that's quite um, important because in this period, whilst it was like a tough period for us, I do think that we were able to rise to the occasion,
Yeah.
um,
For
but definitely with
sure.
a lot more stress than I would have hoped for, right?
Yeah. I mean, and what I'm thinking is as we're looking back, I'm feeling more empathetic stress
Yeah.
than maybe even at the time. Because at the time, I remember the stress, but because the practice was really strong,
Mm,
I was able to basically bypass it,
yeah.
but in quite an effective way. That my experience wasn't that bad. There
Yeah.
was an undertone of like unease,
Yeah.
but because we were
Unease
still
is
at
a
this
good way of putting
time,
it. Yeah.
yeah, we were still at this time doing 2 3 hour sits. We were doing a lot of
Yeah.
meditation and a
Yeah.
lot of hypnotherapy on one another.
Yeah.
right? Because that was a big modality for us at the time.
Back in the day,
And we
yeah.
were doing that every day.
Hmm.
We did it on the walks all the time.
Yeah. Do you know?
And
Oh,
because of that, I'll go on.
no, please go ahead. But that you just reminded me
Yeah,
of
yeah.
something actually.
I was just say because of that, the experience wasn't that bad. And in some ways it was beautiful.
Yeah.
But looking back at it, I'm like, oh, there was in some ways a volcano underneath that was just being
Mm.
kind of melted down with the snow
Yeah.
and the clouds. Like, all right,
Exactly.
don't look down there. Just
Yeah.
let that be.
It was
And,
almost like the path of renunciation. Well, it was the path of renunciation. We
yeah,
were renouncing
yeah.
ourselves from the world rather than there's a path you can go instead, like integrating that, where you don't just renounce yourself from the world, you go fully into that without experiencing the suffering that comes with it. But what
Mm,
the walk thing reminded me of is actually a massive shadow and breakthrough that you had, if you don't mind me telling this story,
yeah, of
right?
course.
It was outside. If anyone knows Budapest, one of the most beautiful areas of the city is the Basilica in
Oh,
Budapest. There's
yeah,
like a
yeah.
basilica and there's the square and then there's like loads of streets, but there's one main street that leads down to the river and that's really cool. And this was in the evening time. And this was the massive breakthrough that Cameron had when we were practicing this coaching, this hypnotherapy. Now would have been shadow work if we had access to this modality. It was him
Mm,
breaking through the fact that just because something felt bad, it didn't mean that it actually was bad, and he didn't have to jump on it all of the time. Do you remember this breakthrough? I remember it like it was yesterday.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
remember it very clearly, actually.
That was like a
You
one and
know,
a half hour session. Yeah. I
yeah,
remember.
absolutely. And it was really the beginning of that breaking of attachment to states in a lot of way, and
Mm,
almost attachment that my inner world meant something about the external.
right.
My inner world was dictating in some ways. Like if it feels bad, that means something bad's going to happen. If it feels good, that means something good's going to happen. Right? Kind of that
Yeah.
way of doing it, and also really being sensitive to my ups and downs because there were so many stories around what that meant
Mm,
instead of being able to be in equanimity around it because that's what we were practicing. So it was almost like the equanimity had become a state
wow.
instead of being instead of being a view or a meta process. It was still a state.
Right.
And so I think if I remember this one really began that journey of like, oh, a flattening out
Mm,
of states a little bit,
yeah.
where, oh, it doesn't matter so much if I'm experiencing an amazing blissful state
Yeah.
or if I'm experiencing a slightly tense resistant state.
Mm,
And it kind of started to, do that thing where it goes from um, vertical to horizontal, right? It was like, this is the most important thing. I've got to get my state high, try and keep my state high all the time to, oh, it doesn't matter. And when it doesn't matter, you end up actually experiencing often beautiful states
yeah.
and a lot more of that security, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
without having to control it or push it into that.
I feel
I
like you
think that
almost,
started then.
yeah. I feel like to add to that, it also adds to your empowerment in general. And I mean, we've been
Yeah.
using this word a lot because I think it really resonates, but also anti-fragility because
Mm,
you've chosen one metric, right? So let's say the metric of the people that, like, I would say about 50% of our clients are just coming from this worldview where they're using metrics like, I made this amount of money, therefore I can feel this about myself. Or back in the really old days, I had this amount of dates, or I had this amount of social interaction, I had this amount of social expression, therefore I can feel this about myself, you know?
mm,
Or another one, what's another example? Like another one is discipline or like motivation. Like I've done this amount of tasks, therefore I can feel this about yourself. So if you're not careful, if these are usually what? They're usually closers, people who run like sales teams,
yeah.
entrepreneurs or founders in and of themselves, like or like kind of high stress executive jobs like corporate finance or fintech or the intersect. I'm thinking of one guy, the intersection between law and software engineering, basically. And like all of these jobs, if you're not careful, you're coming from that paradigm where you need something external to invalidate what you're feeling internally, then you can do the same thing with states. And we're not just trying to make it like Cameron was
Yeah.
just doing this. I was doing it as well in a bit of a different way. I would say I'd actually like to get your perspective on how I was doing something similar in this part. But I think what you're saying is really powerful because how many times have we heard like salespeople being like, "Oh, I just need to get in the right mood for the close. I need to
Mm.
get in the right state,
Yeah,
or I need to,
absolutely.
in order to post this content, like this video sales letter or content, or I'm working with an athlete at the moment. I got to feel a certain way. That's a whole other weight of an external, or there's a whole other weight of an expectation that I need to be feeling X, Y, Z in order to get there. When if you go through
Yeah.
that hollowing out that Cameron, you just talked about, then it kind of feels anti. I'm not sure if it was like this for you, but it definitely it feels anti. I can't think of the word now. I just completely blanked it. Anti-logical, or like the
Mm.
thing where it feels like it's the opposite of something. Like it shouldn't be true. I'm forgetting the word. Excuse me. It feels like it shouldn't be true, but actually by giving that thing up, you first of all get that state much easier, and because that state becomes irrelevant to how well you perform or how well you
Yeah.
feel about yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's so interesting is it's really about dropping a lot of the meaning about what the state meant.
Mm,
I've noticed people actually, when they just experience a pure state without the stories, they often don't get super attached.
yeah.
But often when they're moving maybe from the external metrics to the internal metrics,
Mm,
often the ears are taking on of more stories and more meaning making about what that means.
mm,
And so sometimes I've seen it where whatever the external metrics were satiating within them, if it was, let's say, I closed a certain amount today or this week, and that makes me feel like, I don't know, I'm worthwhile or I'm good enough. Maybe that's not how we experience it, but that's the underlying story.
mm,
I've seen the same thing with those people who then transition into deeper inner work, and that's really good. And it's definitely an upgrade. But
yeah.
then the better state also becomes the progression metric. And this was very true for me in a lot of
Mm,
ways,
yeah.
right? The better state I'm in, I'm like, I've progressed. Now
Yeah.
I've just got to hold that state for all the time. I mean, I've progressed even more. And I'll finally be there. I'll finally be whatever the storyline is. And what's interesting is it's so hard to break that worldview
Mm,
when you're in it. Because when you're in it, it feels like the height of growth is
mm.
just being at the most incredible, blissful, peaceful, unified state possible
I
all
mean,
the
it's tough to
time.
argue with that, isn't it? If you
Like
look at it from that
it's not
worldview.
it's not bad, you know.
Yeah, it's not a bad,
That's
especially when
not
you
that.
just came from the hustling, burnout, or procrastination, discipline kind of
Yeah,
growth area.
absolutely. Yeah. And actually this was interesting. I had a there's an aspect of this that I was speaking about with a client where he's become very good at generating states from the
Mm,
shadow work and being with the light. And he's able
okay.
to operate from that place most of the day,
Mm,
which is amazing. But there was still a lot of the doingness because he
right.
was very, I mean, you probably noticed it with your clients. I noticed it a lot with mine. There's a really strong activeness
Mm,
where the part of himself that does things, that creates, that builds, that's focused is very strong. That's why they did so well originally, and that's why they
mm,
can do quite well with this. But when they're doing the light work, they're still doing it. They're still like, all right, now I'm celebrating. Now
yes.
I'm growing this. Now I'm deepening it. And that's wonderful. Something we played with yesterday was, all right, well, what happens if you let that celebrate you? Let the state we've been embodying this light, nurture you, support you. And it almost started to break some of this progression worldview around the
Mm,
States, if that makes sense, where when he was finally able to be in that receptive place, right, he was able to enjoy that, able to be nurtured by that, able to really experience it where it wasn't him doing it anymore.
mm,
And what that started to do is it started to break down the part of him in a good way. Like, don't remove it, but just break it down a little bit. That was micromanaging his states
mm,
and kind of controlling it and making it happen,
yeah,
and a little bit reactive to if he was in a good state or if he was in a bad state. And so it was almost letting that part actually take some time off. It kind of opens his worldview a little bit.
really. Wow. Is that was similar to you in this time period?
I think so, for sure. I mean, it was both a breaking of the meaning
Yeah.
and then also noticing that there was still a very strong I and a very strong part of me that was controlling, a part of me that was making it happen, part of me that was
Mm,
doing the meditation, doing the state work, doing the shadow work.
mm,
And when that part of me got to be an actual part rather than the default leader,
mm,
it kind of allowed the consciousness to move from this slightly domineering, it was very subtle, domineering place to a much more democratic place. Actually,
right.
from the work we did with Kim, and he
Mm,
he said it outright, like moving from a um, authoritarian to a democratic mind. That was kind of when he was sharing that, that was happening for me at a similar time a little bit, and allowing just the emergence of parts and allowing that to actually become a part instead of just being this kind of dictator.
mm, yeah. Would you say that was like the defining moment of this period for you, looking back? Also, when does this period even end? Because for me, I think this period
Yeah,
ends just before New Year's when we go to Lebanon.
yeah, that was a fun trip. I
Yeah,
think so. I think so. I think Lebanon capped it off.
yeah,
You know, we
s-
we did all this, and we are
yeah,
finally released
yeah.
in some ways.
I feel like we didn't do the best job at all. I feel like maybe is there some stories that we're missing from this time period? I think it was just like a constant, relentless like working on the business, leads falling through, and then a big close coming through at the last minute, taking care of
Yeah.
sister, kind of managing things on our own. Obviously, Pierre comes back at some point. I can't remember specifically when that was actually.
No, no, he doesn't. Remember, that's where we go to Lebanon to meet him.
Oh, because oh yeah, so this is another funny story. One moment, me and Cameron are working out at this gym, our favorite gym in Budapest, which is just outside. It's not near Octagon. It's near one of the shopping centers called West End. Not the West End of London. I don't know why it's called the West End. I don't even think it's in the west of Budapest, which is funny. Um,
Yeah.
and when I'm working out, and I get a call from Pierre. He's supposed to be getting on a plane, and he was like, because it was COVID, and he didn't have a COVID test. It was just after COVID actually, and he was like, "Hey boys, I'm not making it back." And we were like, "Oh, why?" And he's like, "Because my connecting flight goes through the US and they're super strict on you have to have had a COVID test, so they're not letting me on the plane." And this was actually
Right.
when I think when you had to organize all of that, right? Like all of
Oh,
the
yeah. I remember that day. That was stressful.
yeah,
And I was just terrified of like ruining it.
yeah.
We were working at the time with less resources than we had had before. You know,
That's
we'd been
a
quite abundant until
nice,
these last
blissful
few
way of putting
months.
that.
Yeah.
Less resources.
And
Okay.
so it was kind of like I have to get it right.
Yeah.
And this, the flights from the US on or from Mexico aren't, cheap. But and we were also organizing it with a client because he was going to go to Lebanon. He was going to run a
Mm.
retreat there. And so there was these two guys, and you have Pierre, who's someone I look up to a lot,
Yeah.
and a great leader and authority in our lives at the time. But then even the client, he is a really successful dude, right?
Mm.
One of amazing client for us at the time. And
Great
I
dude.
was, what, like 22, just like, all right, I guess I got to organize this.
Yeah.
Better not screw it up a little bit.
Yeah. Also, at
And
this point,
so,
you didn't have the best organizational skills, did you? I would say.
well, yeah, I definitely struggled with it for sure.
Yeah.
I think even now doing that kind of job would be challenging, right?
Yeah.
It's quite a difficult one unless you've got a real mind for that and it just
Mm.
works out because you've got to manage so many different things. And yeah, I mean, I just remember being so stressed in that moment
Mm.
and just being like, all right. And we went back to our apartment, which was a place we didn't even have Wi-Fi. And I got to figure it out. So the only way to figure it out was I had to go to a Starbucks to go get Wi-Fi.
Ah, yeah.
And I had barely any money as well. So I was like, all right, well, let's order the cheapest thing and
Yeah.
go and sort this with the Wi-Fi. And just for hours and hours trying to find the right flights, trying to,
Yeah.
message the client, trying to get it sorted. Eventually it came through. And when it did, it was just the biggest relief. And I think
Yeah.
that's almost around that time when that got sorted
Mm.
was when I think it kind of eased a little bit. You
Yeah.
know,
I would
we'd
say
been
so
through so
too.
much stress, the stress of literally trying to get sister from Poland to Budapest, which isn't even that far, but feeling like we might have to airlift her because she was
Yeah.
struggling so much.
That's something we really
And
considered.
then, yeah, yeah, it
Yeah.
was a genuine option for a while.
Yeah.
And then, you know, getting Pierre to Mexico and getting him back. And I think when that finally finished, it was just a relief.
Yeah.
And it moves us on, I think, to that next chapter where we went to Lebanon.
Yeah.
And I think
For New
that
Year's.
period of winter, yeah, yeah, yeah. It was
Yeah.
kind of a breaking of the winter as well, because in Lebanon
Yeah.
it was quite sunny, it was really nice.
Yeah.
And it was like this rebirth where we all came back together.
Yeah. I would say so too. Also, it was a rebirth in the sense that we were onboarding a new person to help with marketing and get that thing sorted. Actually, a character who you already introduced earlier in this story, if you remember correctly.
Yeah,
Someone, our
that's
good
right.
friend, Omar Harb, or Omar, we'll just call him. And he was great seeing him. And also, what's important to note, the reason why we went over to Lebanon is because we were running an in-person retreat for another client. And also, I guess you could say Omar at the same time, um, because he hadn't quite been onboarded. That was something that spontaneously arose because he was, a business coach, all that kind of stuff. So it just made sense. But we were there because that retreat was a way to like have us all be supported too,
Yeah,
right? To kind of ease
absolutely.
the financial burden. So anyway, we get to Lebanon, and apparently this whole time Pierre's just been so deep in meditation and like just like being in the zone and doing all that kind of stuff that the day that he knows me and Cameron are going to arise, this is the day where apparently, according to Omar and our client, he actually starts like talking again or bantering around a bit more. Do you remember hearing this from them?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
So when we arrived, it was like a vibe, like this, like straight away. It was
Oh,
like, oh, what's up? It was so good to see him, after being away for such a long time. Because up until this point, 6 months, we were like all attached to the hip, you know? So
mm,
it was great seeing him. But for them, it was like solid, like silent retreat, silent retreat, silent retreat, silent retreat. And then suddenly, we're all bantering around again. And that Lebanon trip was just so, it was like such a cool adventure, but it's also when we got a lot of our you know, the training wheels were really taken off in terms of us being coaches in and of our own right, I would say. Would you say that's fair to say at this
Yeah,
point? Because
absolutely.
up until this point, we were just doing calls. You know, I don't want to toot our own horn a bit too much, but we're really doing really well on calls. We've been trusted with all clients, you know, for months at this point. It wasn't just like the period before. And we were really seeing good, measurable results. Like people were getting into relationships, they were able to express themselves more, less stifled, just feeling much more like, I guess you would call it their ideal self, to put it like that. But when you're in a retreat situation where you're literally, you know, like sleeping in the same room as the client, because it's that much of a focus, like live in shadow work, insecurity, belief-based systems, like this is what you should be doing. Oh, you see how your mind's going in this way, downward spirals, all this kind of stuff. Like it's that much of a level of intention. At no point are you ever, or me and Cameron, and Pierre, obviously, but Pierre's, you know, been doing that for 15 years. Did you ever switch off?
Mm,
Right? You have to be on all of the time. That means like you can't have any like because part of for the transformation to really work is like you have to actually like be that person too. And there's no
yeah.
better way
Oh, for sure.
than like being around someone 24/7. You know, that's why being around Pierre was so instrumental for us because he just was that way 24/7. You know, there was no like
Yeah,
if someone's just ticking off the charisma checklist or ticking off the confidence checklist or behaviors and that kind of stuff, at some point that's going to show through. And
yeah,
we also had a lot of freedom because a lot of the time we'd be with clients one on one on our own, and it'd be up to us to be like, okay, now we need to work on this. Now we need to do
yeah,
this. You know, oh, you're going into that. Let's just chill a bit on that, and let's actually talk about what made you start asking those questions about why you're not good enough. You know,
yeah,
was that what it was
yeah.
like for you?
I think that period was just, well, first it was a huge relief because we'd gone from just kind of being on our own, going through our winter period, and then suddenly it's Lebanon. It's like a couple days before New Year's Eve, and we're all back together, right?
Mm.
With two guys who were clients at the time who were just fantastic and also
Yeah,
very different to what we
yeah,
imagined they would be. It's so
yeah,
interesting. You meet people, you spend months on
yeah,
Zoom with them, and you finally see
yeah.
them in real life, and you're like, you're not at all how I imagined.
Who I thought you would be. Yeah,
Yeah,
in a good way, obviously.
exactly. In a
Yeah,
great way, right? They would, I mean, we thought they were awesome, but I think they were even better
in
in
person. Yeah,
person. And I think what that period was a little bit, like you said, emerging into our own coaches, our own humans in many ways,
mm,
right? Rather than being the apprentice identity, to actually just coming up a little bit into like, all right, we're now not equals, Pierre's still the leader, but we're coaches within this rather than trainees at this
yeah,
point.
yeah.
I think that was a
I agree.
solidifying of it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And one of the things that was really interesting kind of at that time was it wasn't like we necessarily went up to that level. It
no,
almost felt like that was a dropping away of maybe the doing and the shackles that we had had for months, right? Or not even shackles, like stabilizers,
mm,
right? It was kind of like, all right, now you're not thrown in the deep end, but you're in a place where you can't really do it. Like you said,
yeah,
you're around people 24/7. You can't really do that. You know, maybe you can do it for
no,
a few hours
yeah,
where you kind of put yourself in a perfect state and you respond.
mm,
But you can't do that for days on at a time, especially when you're in an, a place where it's not purely training, right? There's a lot of social stuff. You're just a lot of having fun together as well, engaging as
mm,
humans.
yeah,
And so it kind of was able to drop that away and allow it to become more of who we were, in my opinion,
yeah,
then than what it was before, where you have that safety of you get to be Cameron, you get to be Aaron, and then you jump on a call when you're in coach mode, right?
Yeah,
Or hypnotherapist mode. And this one was like, oh, that just becomes you,
yeah.
right? Being in that place 24/7. And, the best part of it was New Year's Eve,
Ah,
you know,
yeah.
till to this day,
One of my favorite, if
possibly
not
my
my most
favorite.
favorite
Yeah,
New Year's Eve ever.
yeah,
Yeah. So
absolutely.
I mean, I'll set the scene and then you can say your experiences of it just to really set it up. Like our client had like a really nice place on the top of this hill just outside of Beirut, like the top of this hill.
Mm.
It's like all the really nice houses and he was making jokes to us. He was like if you say that you live on that hill, depending on what height you live on, people know like kind of like how successful you are, kind of as a funny kind
Right.
of joke, you know? And this was his like he was working in his family business at the time. I think it's like some kind of logistical thing. So literally our nightmare, right? If we had that as a
Mm.
family business, I think I
Yeah,
definitely would have been disowned by my family, from just like lack of enthusiasm.
me too.
But it's a super nice place. Like it's a hill overlooking the whole city, and you can see the sea and there's the mountains. But what made it even cooler is the living room that we were all chilling in had like this ring of sofas and places to sit. And there was it was almost like it was a bulging out of the house or whatever.
Mm.
And it was
Yeah,
like there was a panoramic view of windows all around, basically.
yeah.
And I'll let you finish this
Just
off, but yeah, please go on. Go on.
I was saying, just overlooking the whole city. Like
Yeah.
we've got to say that part because it was
Yeah.
the perfect location. It was kind of almost into the hill, but then the window was just overlooking this. I mean,
Yeah.
Beirut, which I'd never been to. It's a beautiful city,
Dude, I love the city
and
and the
that
people.
place was like the perfect place to view
Yeah.
it from.
So we watched like the sunset and then we just get chatting. We thought we were just gonna like stay awake until midnight or something and then
Yeah,
head to bed. Where were we sleeping even that? Oh, we was like sleeping in some Airbnb like somewhere else.
something
But
like
as
that.
Cameron's gonna tell you, suddenly it gets to 7 a.m. and not only has the conversation not died down at all, but it's been exponentially increasing overnight, 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 overnight.
Oh, yeah. And at the time we weren't drinking or anything. I think we just had a maybe coffee. I don't know.
Yeah,
And I remember the topic at the time was personality types and the Enneagram. I
yeah,
remember so specifically what we were talking
yeah,
about. And it was just amazing. You had all like four or five of us, and everyone was so into it. And someone
yeah.
would come up with another thing and another thing and another thing. And it was around the time we were really exploring using those frameworks for
Mm,
coaching, right?
yeah.
Not as ways to define people, but as maps for shadow and different constructs that people might be taking on.
Yeah, just certain
And
leanings that a
yeah,
personality might have, and it's just a
exactly.
useful map to just categorize it. Not that it becomes
Yeah.
restrictive, which is what I think is the bone that me and Karen have to pick with a lot of those kind of like, I guess you can call them
Mm,
personality coachings, where it becomes restrictive, like this is you, like you are the tree, rather than it just being a useful framework to relate deeper with somebody else.
yeah. And what was so great about that experience, I think this summed up a huge part of essentially our apprenticeship with Pierre and learning from him and learning from Sister is that when you're around people like that who have real passion of these topics all the time, you just end up talking about it and it doesn't feel like work, but you end up absorbing it so much
Mm,
that you get to a really high level of understanding very, very quickly because you're just around it, talking about it, exploring it
mm,
all the time. And New Year's Eve was exactly that, just exploring this, really understanding it and playing with what's it like from Aaron's map? What's it like from
mm,
Pierre's map? What's it like from Omar's map? From Cameron's map?
yeah,
And finally, we'd watched the sun set, and suddenly the sun's rising, and we're like, oh, what
Yeah.
time is it? Oh,
Yeah.
it's 6:30 a.m., 7 a.m. And at that point, we had a decision to make.
Yeah.
And the decision was, all right, boys, do we head to bed or do we keep going?
Do we say yes to adventure?
And we did say yes to adventure.
Yeah.
And we just tanked a few more coffees. We didn't
Yeah.
really need it at that point.
Yeah.
And we just kept talking, kept speaking.
Now at
And
3
eventually,
p.m., for me, that's
oh
when the
yeah, go
adventure ended.
on. Yeah,
My body was
that's
still in the
when,
adventure, but that's when my spirit had really been broken. Didn't matter. I was
yeah.
drinking coffees like they were water, and it had zero effect on me
Oh my God.
whatsoever.
Yeah. At that time, the adventure was less of an adventure and more of like, all right, now we just need to survive this. It was a
Yeah,
vibe until that point. We went to
yeah.
some cool place, like some tea or coffee place that our host knew, which was awesome. And then I
Oh,
just
that was so
remember
cool. That
it
place.
was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
But all I remember is being there, and it was about that 2 or 3 p.m. time,
yeah,
and just being like, "I'll get this, yeah,
yeah,
just get that." So
yeah,
slowly fall asleep. Oh no, I'm gonna wake up, and
yeah.
then some more people come who we actually know vaguely, like through friends of friends, and I just remember having to be more social at back of the Airbnb. Do you remember?
Oh, I
Do you remember
remember.
this?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. That's when I also, because the guy, one of the friends, also used to do some judo, but he didn't tell me. So he wrestled a bit. Like this guy, I think is maybe it's, and I was just so tired wrestling with this
Oh dear.
person. Oh my God. Yeah. That's a funny moment. Yeah.
And I just remember being like, bro, why did you invite more people for us to hang out with? I just want to sleep.
Oh, because our host did get to
Uh,
sleep. Yeah.
He did sleep. He did sleep. That's why
Yeah.
he was like, guys, let's go do this. Let's do this. And we're like, all the other five of us who hadn't slept were like, bro, we just want to sleep.
Yeah.
But we did tank it till
Mm,
like 11 p.m. And I remember I went back into the room and it was so great. It had blackout blinds. So it got pitch black. And I went to sleep for like 16 hours. And it was one of the best sleeps
mm.
I've ever had.
Yeah. Same. Same. I mean, how do we even top that period off? I guess, is there any closing remarks that you want to address there? I
Well,
think your thing of integrating the coach or the guide and that just actually realizing that we don't have to be just an aspiring aspirant anymore and that we can
yeah,
actually own that. I think that was the really big takeaway from that period.
yeah. Also, for me, there was one particular insight that built on the previous couple of months ago. And if we
Mm,
look at Stage's model, at this point, I was quite deep in fourth person perspective, right? 4.0. And I remember we were just in the car, me, you, the boys, and something just clicked. Where I just saw like the view that all perspectives were kind of equal, right? That everything was kind of flat, that I had been
mm.
taking. I started to see that I was constructing that, right?
Wow. Okay.
And it was, I'm not doing the best way at fully articulating. I remember it was a really clear moment where I just kind of saw, oh, this is a perspective too. Because when I was
Mm.
in Real 4.0, which and many people do this, you can get a little bit dogmatic about your
Relativity.
perspective, right?
Yeah.
You know, like, oh,
Your
nothing
perspective of
matters,
relativity is the,
meaninglessness. Yeah,
yeah.
is the
Yeah.
best perspective. Exactly.
Yeah. Which isn't very
So isn't,
relative.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so there's a lot of, people can articulate it in different ways. It can feel a little bit meaningless
Mm.
at times. Nothing matters,
Nihilism
this kind of stuff. Yeah,
in some ways.
nihilism. That's one way
Yeah.
it might be experienced. It can be experienced other ways too.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it was just like a breaking through. And it was almost the first early bits of later stages coming online. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it was literally like that. I was like, oh, I don't
Yeah.
need to do that. Because I was getting a little bit bored with some of that 4.0 perspective
Yeah.
that was making life a little bit dull and a little
Yeah.
bit gray at times. And it was
Mm.
certainly a journey from here. It wasn't like I popped out of it in any way, but
Yeah.
it was that initial seed of I can integrate the previous stages. I can
Yeah.
integrate a bit more achievement, a bit more um, progression and growth. I can integrate the previous stages, and that led perfectly into what we then went into,
As soon as
which
we got
was when we
back.
got back to Budapest and
Yeah.
we were this new team with a new member who
Mm.
was really, in many ways, complementing a lot of our shortcomings, where me, you, Pierre weren't exactly marketing geniuses, and he was really great at that,
Yeah.
right? In many
Yeah.
ways. And so he came in and, we almost started over in Budapest again.
Mm.
And it was a very different vibe. It really felt like we were much more of a proper business at this point, you know. I'm curious what your experience of that was like,
Yeah.
breaking from Lebanon, coming back to Budapest again.
I just want to touch back on that you breaking through your perspective to say that if you're getting bored with your worldview, don't shy away from it. That is the groundwork to begin to reflect back at yourself. How is it to describe it? This is actually in the Hindu. I think this is from the Hindu lineages. They describe it like this, but I think it might be Buddhist as well. When the observer becomes the observed, when the witness
Mm,
becomes the witnessed, right? It's like a really
yeah.
big paradigm of you looking back at yourself and realizing that this is not all there is, basically. I don't know if it was to your experience, but that's whenever I've gone through things like that. It's
Yeah,
like that. And it's
absolutely.
almost like an instant upshift in your level. It doesn't mean that there's not a long journey from there at all, definitely not. But now you have access to something which beforehand you didn't even know, not even, you didn't even know was possible. You didn't even know what the question was to become aware of that reality. So you're not aware of that reality, and you're not even aware of the things that you would have to do in order to be able to become aware of that reality. So just complete
Mm,
unawareness. And each upshift that you go through, you lose a level of fear and you gain a level of integration. What that means, obviously, less fear means more courageous. You become more in touch with yourself because you're not letting fear dictate how you perceive yourself and what you want to do. And with more integration, what can you do with more complexity of thought? Well, essentially, what you become is you become a adult to a teenager. Like there is a clear difference in ability that an adult, considering they're both, at the same level, can do opposed to someone who's a teenager. And I think that's something that's really important to touch on, but not to obsess over. That's actually all I really have to say. Is anything coming up for you on that?
no, I
No?
think that's perfect. And like
Yeah.
that piercing through, it happens organically, like
Yeah.
you said, by leaning into that boredom.
Yeah. Exactly. As for the period of us coming back, I just remember that being a hustle period. This is what, like the end of January to February. These are like the months where the business is really like tanking, But
Mm,
because we had this whole new energy and motivation, I don't remember feeling like it was like that as much as December, November months at all. Because we had a real strategy. We're putting out content, all that kind of stuff. Um, and we launched, at this point, there was a school group. We launched that. And I remember at this point, this is when I completely like burst through any issues I really had with procrastination at all. Because we were working like long days, like 10, 12-hour days, like maybe more even. And it was the end of one of these days that for whatever reason, we were like, it's ready, we need to launch. And I had to spend another 4, 5 hours editing the video while you guys were all bantering around on the sofa talking about how excited you are. But I was just
a
so
tough
so
job.
locked in with that, and obviously Omar's back in Lebanon, so me and him are calling. I'm sending him videos of he's like, you need to change this, add this, all that kind of stuff. And we get it done. And the moment that group was launched, that's when I think this new era was birthed. So we kind of brushed through that kind of couple months because, to be honest, there's not much to talk about in terms of we're seeing sister and we're hustling on the business basically, and we've just
Yeah.
come from that worldview, not that worldview, from Lebanon, which is like a whole other. That feels like even to now that feels like this crazy imagined like adventure that we went on basically, um, and yeah, like what was that period like for you?
You know, it was good fun. It was a
Yeah,
very different energy, right? And just like with all development, it kind of swings back and forth, and we went from more spiritual, just witnessing everything, working with everything, to all right, let's push a little bit. Let's be in the external. Let's build
let's be in the
and still
world.
use all of this, right? But let's be in the world now and let's really create.
Mm,
And that was just an experience of work, hustling a little bit, still
yeah.
seeing sister a lot, but
Whilst
also
using the
having this,
meditation, actually, that
yeah,
reminded me. I don't mean to
yeah,
interrupt you. Using like one of our sister comes from the lineage of Bhante Vimala Ramsey, who's her teacher, and therefore he's our lineage teacher. He has the book, Meditation is Life, Life is Meditation. This was actually the period where we understood what that means, I would say. Would you say that's fair to say?
yeah, because there was a real stress test. You
Yeah.
know, it was something where we had to bring it into the world
Mm,
to do that amount of work and to be that focused and that locked in. And for me at the time, it was two roles. It was doing a lot of the admin, right,
yeah.
organization, which was definitely the tough, but definitely had to do a lot of meditations to do that,
Yeah.
but also the coaching
Yeah.
and to be able to level up in a way where I felt confident where that these new guys were coming through, that I could deliver. And same thing for you, that we could deliver in a way that they're going to be like, this is fantastic. Like, this is definitely
Yeah.
what I signed up for. And I'm getting everything that they've said that I will,
And
right?
more, really, because we
And
wanted
more.
to over deliver in order
Yeah.
to spread that word, about what we were doing.
Yeah, exactly. And that was where it went from this curiosity, a little bit of theory of using meditation in life. Yep, that sounds good, to actually doing it. And
Mm,
actually, because we were working, but we were doing a lot of meditation still. If I remember correctly, and I could be wrong here, we were
yeah.
still doing
We were
90
doing
minute sits minimum, you
90
know?
minutes in the morning, 90 minutes in the evening. That's what I
Yeah,
remember. Yeah.
exactly. And I think
Yeah.
what we would do, if I don't know if it was this period, I'm pretty sure it was, we do the Saturday 3 hour sits,
Ah, yeah.
right?
That was
And that was
such
an
a trippy
interesting
feeling.
one.
I would look at the
Yeah,
my phone because we just do it after the gym, right? I think we do it after the gym. It'd usually be like around 2 p.m. and I'd look at Karen and I'd be like, "See you at 5." Like that's I don't know why, but that moment always stays in my head because it's just
yeah,
I don't know why that trips me out. Probably people are listening to this being like, "Aaron, why are you being tripped out so much by that?" But it's because it's such a long time period to just be doing nothing, and we really took that
yeah,
seriously because obviously Sister was still giving us like spontaneous kind of talks. Obviously, Pierre was helping us out because he was being trained by Sister in how to give meditation insight or how to give like run Dharma talks and meditation and all that kind of stuff. But then we were able to use that because even though that period should have been really hustling, right? It was still a ton of fun and there was a ton of peace in all of it, which actually made us more productive and more resilient.
yeah,
But there were still limitations,
absolutely.
which we'll get into probably in the
Yeah,
third podcast of this series, which will be the last podcast of this series, where you're still not, there's something about like you're not fully meeting the moment where it's actually at, if that makes sense.
yeah,
Like there's still like a barrier. You're still putting, oh, I have to do all of this meditation in order
yeah,
to be able to do that. Which is
absolutely.
so then it just takes the place of what a morning routine or
Yeah,
like setting up your day with your evening. That's another one, right? Where you gotta all that kind of stuff. All that stuff is great. Like meditation is great too. But when that becomes the thing that has the power over you, then I would say that's when that becomes a problem. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get more into that because that's really the flavor
Mm.
of the probably the third podcast we're going to do on this. But this period, it was doing wonders. In this
Yeah.
period, this was the magic sauce that
No
I was not
complaints.
giving away for anything. Anyone's like, bro, maybe you shouldn't do it. I'm like, shut up. This is the
Yeah.
best thing ever. And
I am
I'm carry
enlightened.
on and doing it. I'm enlightened. Shut up. Don't tell me I'm not enlightened,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And it was really like people talk about monk mode, but that
Yeah.
was real monk mode where,
Yeah.
and everyone in the team was doing it. Omar was doing it. Pierre was, of course, doing it. We were doing it. Patrick was doing it. And it would be meditation and then focused work.
Mm.
And we did really well.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of success in that time, not in those initial couple of months, because it does take time. But Omar's strategy started to actually pull in, we were getting like 3,000 views on like an average video by
Mm.
this point, like probably a few months later.
Yeah.
I remember it was amazing to see that, oh, a coherent strategy and work over months, not days or
Mm.
weeks, really leads to a degree of success, right?
Yeah.
We had some definite still problems, but it was leading to a real degree of success where things were growing. We were, in my opinion, it felt like we were both on a collective, but also an individual, really integrating that 3.5, that achiever energy
Mm.
within to our consciousness, within to the team, within the company as a whole, not taking away from meditation mode, not taking
Yeah.
away from practice.
Yeah. For sure.
What was it like for you when, not those initial months, but as it started to actually gain some traction?
It was just very promising because I think at this point it's pretty clear to make that like we were kind of out of the feast and famine point at this point. The
Yeah,
business was actually doing quite well. Like we weren't just taking a trip down to the kebab shop every lunchtime because it's the only thing that we could afford, right? It was
yeah.
past that
Although I
that
did get a
kebab.
taste of a kebab, I would
Yeah.
go just for the pleasure of it in the end.
Especially that one near Octagon, that had the nice bread.
Oh,
That was super good,
yeah, yeah.
actually. Yeah.
That was very good.
And then we had probably the worst Vietnamese restaurant next to our apartment that I've ever been to. Do you remember
Oh,
that place?
yeah,
Just the
yeah,
most
yeah, yeah.
tasteless Vietnamese, like
Bland.
McDonald's-ified Vietnamese food.
Yeah.
Ah, and yeah, so it was nice seeing that. We were all like leaning into like archetypes and that kind of thing. Um, it was kind of like a reaping what we'd sowed because we'd just been working so hard up until this point, and it was also summertime at the same time, so it felt like we were
Yeah.
really like at the peak of the harvest. But just underneath everything, and then well, also another person who was doing took over all the admin from Cameron, and also I guess a little bit of me. So we didn't have anything to worry about. We could just be coaches and just crush that as best as we can. Our good friend Toby, right,
Yeah.
who was also a part of it. But because there were so many people and we were also still with Sister, like a lot of that money like was just spent straight away, basically.
Mm.
It was like a massive. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say also, while we were dialed in, we did
Yeah.
have a tendency to go out a little bit more in this period. Do you remember?
Yeah,
As it
yeah,
started to go from spring to summer, we were very focused, but we did like to go out a little bit and have some fun, which was great, but that
yeah.
also didn't help
Yeah, no, that didn't
at
help at all.
times.
It was fun, but it was like as you can see, there was definitely some, patterns that were coming up there. It was a great, super fun period. We were also running at the end of this period that really kicks it off is that me and Cameron and Patrick and Pierre were basically all running these like in-person retreats, one after the other, after the other, after the other. That was
Uh,
another real like trial by fire because there was like no break in between it. And if you've never done that
Absolutely.
before, it's intense for the person who's being coached, let alone the person who's doing the coaching. So this is
Yeah.
actually when meditation takes a bit of a break because we just done it so much, and instead we replace it with the habit of having a few cold ones at the end of the day. At the end of the day,
Absolutely.
which I do
You
not.
know,
It's fully in. Not that I don't endorse drinking, but just like we were. I think this was the point when you take the
I
path of
endorse this. This was a
renunciation.
great idea.
Yeah, okay. There you go. You got Cameron. But when you take the path of renunciation so seriously, like, of course, there's going to be an ego backlash, especially when you've been suppressing
Mm,
parts of yourself. That's also, I think, part of the reason we would go out quite a lot on like a
yeah.
Wednesday or something like
Oh,
that, or
for
like,
sure.
yeah, like just like because it was so like knee jerk. Like we weren't like planning like, oh, let's really have fun on a Friday, you know. It was
Yeah.
like we've been working the whole weekend and like just all the time. It gets to Tuesday and we're all like up to here in terms of just like we need to do something to get out of these four walls, you know.
Oh
And
my God, literally.
if you take the path of renunciation, you're just it's basically just a subtle form of suppression. So obviously ego backlash, not in a bad way. We just wanted to go out more. I was getting to the point where one of oh my gosh, should I even say this? I was getting to the point where one of our our clients got us a really nice bottle of whiskey, like $100 or something like that. Left it in the living room in the morning. I just come in on the morning and wet the whistle a little bit, just to, start the day off properly.
Get it started. Bit of
Yeah.
breakfast.
Really, it really
Oh,
was a bit of breakfast. That did not last for very long. I'm not like it wasn't like an alcoholic or anything like that. But I remember doing that and being
yeah.
like, something's off a little bit here, you know.
Oh,
Um,
well,
oh, that was funny.
you
Yeah,
know what
go
this
ahead.
period was? It was really that spring to summer. There was a real
Yeah,
difference there. And what
yeah,
was fascinating for me was we had that spring period and it did get into summer where we were
mm,
so focused and we really saw success. And we got to a point where we had, 3 or 4 clients wanting to come on intense retreats and expensive retreats, like directly with us. And it was a period right at the start of summer where it was like 10 days, 10 days, 10 days, 10 days.
mhm,
And I remember before it happened thinking, oh, this should be pretty chill. And
yeah.
it was one of the most intense
Oh
experiences
my
that I've
God.
had.
Yeah.
And it was, like you said, that renunciation. And I mean, throughout the whole time, but especially in spring where we were so focused and then the cracks started to break.
Mhm,
And I remember the tone started to shift as well because, I mean, Pierre was doing the same as us in many ways. He was very, very focused. And then he started to want to go out a little bit more as well.
yeah.
And he also recommended me a book called at this period of time called Wild Nights,
Oh
right?
my God. I totally
And
forgot about this subplot that you
this,
went through.
yeah, this was a tone of that summertime that it absolutely needs to be mentioned because Wild Nights
Yeah.
is a book
I
by David
totally forgot
Data
about
about
that.
his mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really a book about David going from the path of renunciation to where it's like he was just so pure, sitting for hours and hours a day, wouldn't touch alcohol or anything, would just drink the most pure water and just meditate.
Can I just
And he
jump in
meets his
here
mentor.
for
Yeah,
one
go for
second? I was explicitly banned from reading this book.
it. You were,
Yeah.
for good reason.
Yeah. Which I guess maybe we'll get into, but Cameron was
Yeah.
reading this, and Cameron had such an impact on Cameron. I'll let you finish this story, but I wanted to say this to you actually. It's had such an effect on you that I've never read this book, and I have fond memories about reading this book.
Oh my, yeah, it's so impactful because it was
Yeah.
really the perfect time because in many ways, we were living like David did in that
Mm.
time before he met his mentor. And David's mentor also reminded me and would remind
Of
you of our
course.
mentor, who is
Yeah.
amazing leader, but also a real. eccentric, adventurer. I mean, there's so many words. Wild in many ways.
Wild.
Pierre
Yeah.
is like just he walks his own path more
Yeah.
than anyone else that I've ever
Yeah.
met. Absolutely. And
100%.
this story of David meeting his mentor, who was similar in a slightly different way. And his mentor was like, David, what are you doing? You think this is
Can you set the scene
spirituality?
of what David was actually like? Because maybe like
Yeah.
like before, what
So
was it before he met his mentor in the book?
yeah, before he was like he had done all the retreats, he was very pure. He would meditate in like a little shack for like 5, 6 hours a day. He
Mm,
wasn't like into anything material, no alcohol, nothing that would be seen as impure, right? He was living a life that was pure, right? And anything else that was seen outside of that was rejected in
mm.
many ways, right? Sexuality,
Sounds very similar.
drinking of any kind, yeah, any
Yeah.
drugs, any of this stuff, even just like material possession was renounced. And
Mm,
there's a place for that, right?
hmm.
But it does create a limited experience. And then he runs into his mentor, and his mentor
What's his
was
mentor's
just
name in the book?
Mykonos,
Mykonos.
Mykonos,
That's right.
and Mykonos, he he was on his own path, and
Yeah.
he followed his own horn, and he took on a perspective of finding truth, depth, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, through everything, right?
Mm,
He took on the real tantric perspective of finding it through sexuality, through, alcohol,
yeah.
through, um, through material possession, even, right? For everything. He didn't want to renounce anything. He wanted to find the truth and the depth in all of it. Right. He didn't want to, in many ways, Mykonos was quite anti-fragile, which you've spoken about a
Mm,
number of times, because he couldn't, he didn't have this purity or not purity, spiritual or not spiritual. It was all the same for him.
mm.
And he tried to bring David into that. And David resisted at first. David's like,
Of
no, no,
course he
no,
did.
that's not pure. I can't do that. He
Yeah.
rejected the call to adventure, right?
Yeah.
In the hero's story. But eventually, he sees that Mykonos is the real deal. He's heard a lot about him. He's a bit eccentric, a little bit crazy. But one thing that everyone says is he's the real deal, right? He really knows what's up. And David, in many ways, is experiencing that boredom in his practice, a
Mm,
sense of, is this it? Is there nothing else?
yeah.
And so he ends up searching for Mykonos, and they have a couple of cold ones together. That's
Mm,
how their initial meeting.
yeah.
And David's like, really? What? Alcohol? I haven't touched this for 10 years almost.
Mm,
And they have it together. And Mykonos has got all these stories and telling him, like, breathe through it. Feel into the truth there. Feel into the depth. Feel into the mother. Right? There's all
mm,
these beautiful ways of articulating it. And David just has these incredible experiences, not because of the alcohol, but through it.
mm,
And Mykonos just takes him on this adventure of saying yes to everything and going into these experiences that are dangerous, that are impure at times, that are seen as not spiritual at times, or even materialistic. But through that, David finds a deeper freedom. He finds a deeper sense of what he calls spirituality or depth. And the whole moral of the book was going into all of it, not renouncing any of it,
mm,
finding the depth through everything. And that influence for me at the time kind of drew me into the tantric perspective or even the bhakti perspective that everything is love. And it started to really influence how I was viewing things instead of just viewing it as finding depth in our morning meditations.
mm,
I would look at it as finding depth in each moment when we were with clients or even when we went out
mm,
partying. And I started to be drawn to more of that. And that was kind of necessary, I think, for me because I was a little bit rigid at times.
Mm,
And I have a somewhat tendency to do that of being so focused on what I want. And this kind of let me break out of that, let
yeah.
me take on this call to adventure in each moment. And that really summed up summer for me because we
Mm,
had then this experience that was intense, or it was 10 days, 10 days, 10 days, 10 days with different clients. And instead of trying to meditate through it, I started to kind of kind of go into it, kind of like push into the depth that was already there with each moment with the client, with the challenges we faced, the
yeah.
stress we experienced, and also the celebrations we had,
Yeah.
and kind of the times where we were partying a little bit with
Mm,
the guys, even with the clients, celebrating with them. And it was dropping away the idea that meditation or spirituality was away from life.
yeah. There was a monolith that was up here, right? That life was
Yeah,
down
yeah,
here, and we had to get up there in order to, and we had to stay there. When really,
absolutely.
there's no difference in a
No
sense.
difference. And what was fascinating is Bante Ramsey, who's our teacher's teacher.
Mm,
I mean, he lived that in many ways because he said meditation is life and life is meditation.
yeah.
Right? There was an air of what we were learning that was true, but I couldn't hear it from there. Right? At the time, I couldn't hear that because I was taking it in my way. I was taking it in a way of slight renunciation, which there was still a tendency there.
Yeah.
I had to hear it through this book and through Pierre, who in many ways lived it, because he's always said yes to adventure,
Yeah.
probably for to some detriment at points.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
I'm
might
sure
even
he would
agree with
say that
that
as
one.
well. Yeah. In the past, yeah, for
And
sure.
so now I had these people that these mentors that were drawing me in that direction, and Summer just ended up being that. Summer was kind of like, what should we do tonight? We would go to the cigar bar, and then we would go out, and it was about, well, when we're in these chaotic situations, going to clubs or going to bars and you're around all these people, can you use
Mm,
metta then? Can you be in deep love and peace and connection
mm,
when you're in a situation where it's a little bit crazy
yeah. When there's
and
a
a
drunk
little bit,
guy getting aggressive,
yeah,
when
yeah,
there's a woman that
absolutely.
you're interested in, and you used to put all of these
And
golden projections onto her, when there's
yeah,
a group and you don't know whether they're laughing at you or they're laughing with you, you know, and maybe you're a little bit drunk and you don't know what's going on, right? How are you going to handle that? Are you still going to be able to have that same deep spiritual connection,
yeah,
or do you have to do all of this X, Y, and Z stuff and be pure in order to get that? That's what I would say.
yeah, absolutely. And even if we trace it back to those months in winter that we started this episode about, that breakthrough that, oh, state doesn't actually matter so much,
Mm,
right? Emotions don't actually matter so much in
mm,
generating that robustness. There was a flavor of that here too. It's like,
yeah,
oh, the practice isn't everything. The practice isn't the thing. It
yeah,
might be something that helps you get there, but the practice isn't something that we need to make holy. And what's amazing is that's an absolutely Buddhist principle,
mm,
right? And
it really
what
is.
is it? The Buddha is like, is it kill the Dharma or something?
Kill the
But
Buddha.
there's the story of
When you
kill.
meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. That's, I think, is that what
Yeah,
you're talking about? Yeah,
there's that, and then there's also, I remember one of our great teachers, Bhante Dhammacavesi, would
yeah.
speak about one of the things that stops people getting to the highest attainments in Buddhism
Oh, I think I
is
remember
they're
this
attached
story.
to the Dharma,
Yeah.
right?
Should I tell you this? Should I tell this
And
story?
Yeah,
Well,
the
please.
boat one.
The boat one, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, you tell it.
This one of my favorite stories, and it's like if you have a path to cross, and there's two islands, and between that island, those two islands is the sea. The same way that you would use a boat to cross that river, you use the Dharma to cross that river of how to liberate yourself from suffering. But the same way that once you get to the other side of the river or the other side of the sea, would you then carry that boat on your back because it was so useful for you up until then? Well, the answer is no, because the boat is for the water. The same way that the Dharma is just for this. And there's another story that links this, again, one of my favorite stories, where the Buddha goes out into the forest with all the bhikkhus. Bhikkhus is the name for monks in the Pali Canon. And it's autumn, so some of the leaves are falling off the trees. And he picks up a handful of these leaves and he says, "What's greater, monks, these leaves or the forest?" And the monks, they all say, "Well, it's the forest, blessed one." And the Buddha looks down at the leaves and he looks back up at them and he says, "But this is all I teach, monks. This is all I teach."
Wow.
And I think that speaks to exactly what you were saying. You know, at some
Yeah,
point, even the attachment to the path or the ideas hold you back. So
yeah.
the idea of self-improvement, self-development,
Mm,
self-actualization, right? All at some point, they're so helpful until they're not. Our
yeah,
narratives about ourselves are so helpful until they're not. Our beliefs about ourselves, they're so helpful until they're not. Was that what you were going to say? Or were you going to go in a
absolutely.
different path?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that was summer. I don't want to speak for you, but that was summer for me.
Yeah,
It was a little bit, it was because what was interesting, it was a killing of a practice to just be right before we got really deep in the practice again. If you
yeah,
remember that period
yeah,
when we were going through a very deep experience, which we'll talk
yeah.
about in a moment. But there was a premature, oh, that was great,
We can breathe.
but I want to be in the world.
Yeah,
You know, I want
exactly.
to go out with the boys and hang
Yeah.
out and have whiskey at 10 a.m. apparently.
Oh my God. That's
You
so
know?
funny. Um, but yeah, we'll get after that. Let's take a quick break and we'll get into that last period, which really is the culmination of everything. Like this whole story
Yeah.
doesn't even deserve to get told in a sense if this part gets
Oh,
left out.
this next bit is the most important.
May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share this merit that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share this merit of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu,
So,
sadhu.
so there.
So this kind of encapsulates this last couple months because we just came from summer, but now, not to be a Debbie Downer, this is when Sister came out, was really dying, basically. And it's kind of funny how the timing is because it's been summer, we made all this money actually, because now we can actually take a couple months off work and just do fulfillment and just do calls and visit Sister Kama essentially every day.
Yeah.
As she's kind of really, as soon as somebody like stops being able to really walk around, they haven't got too much time left. I've uh, I've
Yeah.
seen. Also at this time period, this was the same time that my like nan was dying too. So I had like both of this stuff happening at once, which is kind of like a weird coincidence, I guess you could say. Um, we'll keep it to Sister Kama because obviously my nan is a bit more I don't know if I don't know what my family want to share with about that. But with Sister Kama, I remember this period being a period of, actually, to be honest, this sounds really bad, but I didn't have a lot of grief in this period. I had it afterwards. But in this period, it was just, the word that comes up is just devotion and service,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Absolutely.
Maybe you want to set the scene a bit more, just like
Well,
to really describe what was happening.
yeah. So this period was, and it's so strange to say, one of the most beautiful experiences of my life
Mm,
and one of the most impactful.
yeah.
And it is sad, yet with the practice and with sister and
The
the
way she
support
handled it
of
as
the way
well.
she handled it and the way she orientated us towards handling it,
Yeah.
and also with the support of her top student, Bante Damagavesi,
Yeah.
who was guiding us to how to deal with this and how to help her move on to the next space, right, the next experience. It was beautiful,
Mm,
and it was interesting because I remember at the beginning of this period, she's in hospice and she's had been declining. But like Aaron said, when that they stopped being able to walk, when she stopped being able to walk, it becomes a lot quicker.
yeah.
And so I remember those last couple of months, it really started to go much, much quicker. And uh, we were told by Dharmakavesi that the best way to help her through this, because also not only was her body struggling, her mind was starting to struggle,
Mm,
was that we need to help incline her mind to the Dharma.
yeah.
And the best way to do that was to read discourses of the Buddha, right, from Majjhima Nikaya. Nikaya.
143, 146, I think
Yeah,
is what it was. Chachaka
yeah,
Sutta and Anathapindika Vata Sutta. Yeah.
that's right. And these discourses, one was about the six sets of six, which is basically seeing through the illusion of the body, the mind, and even the witness itself,
Yeah.
like kind of breaking that down. I think it's
Yeah. The
probably a good
five
way of putting it.
aggregates, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the Anathapindika Sutta is
I love that sutta.
a discourse. I love this one too. It's about dying
Yeah.
very directly,
Yeah.
you know,
Couldn't be
and
more
how to
direct.
die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we had these perfect suttas that we didn't choose, and Bhante Dhammakavesi told us what to do.
Yeah. We didn't
And
go through the Majjhima Nikaya. I was like, let's do that one.
let's do this one. We know what's best, sister, don't
Ah,
worry.
that's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. And so for 2 months, and let's not forget that at the time I was 22, 23, you were like 23, 24. We're
Yeah.
not exactly like fully mature human beings at
Chomping
this
at the
point in
bit
time,
to be in a
always.
hospice all day, every day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and read the Dharma. We'd just come out of this summer period where we've just been partying all the time and meeting lots of people, and it's
Yeah.
been great fun. And we're like still kind of wanting to do that.
Yeah.
And poor Topster just arrived just at that time as we
Yeah.
stopped partying and started
Yeah.
this period, and he was not happy bunny, but that's okay.
Yeah. And to give some
And I remember,
context, like
oh,
these suttas, the first one, Anathapindika Vata Sutta, takes 20 minutes to read. Already a bit of a long read. Like, I'm not sure the last time anyone's actually like read out loud for 20 minutes. That like takes a while. And this is from people who've been doing 3 hour sets. Still felt like a long time.
yeah,
And then the second one takes an hour to read out loud. So these, you know, and we were going one a day, twice a day. We did find some good
yeah,
Indian food, but
oh yeah, that was a good side note.
that was a good side note. But yeah, it was just like all this stimulation to no stimulation at all, basically.
Absolutely. And I remember at the beginning I resisted it. Absolutely.
Oh,
And
yeah,
Pierre was an amazing leader. He brought us there, and of course we came,
yeah.
right? We knew that's what was the right thing to do.
He also didn't expect us to come either. What Pierre
Yeah,
was really
yeah,
good at
that's
doing as a
true.
leadership, is I'm coming. You can more than welcome to do whatever. That's how I
Yeah,
remember it, at least, which is
absolutely.
the leader you
Absolutely.
want, really.
Yeah. But of course we came because we
Yeah.
we knew that this was the right thing to do, even though we had some ideas of what we might want to do instead of going out, doing the stimulating activities,
Having a
having
whiskey at
fun
10
and
a.m.
this sort of stuff. That's right. And so I remember sitting there and the sitter would start, and I'm like wishing I was anywhere else but here.
Yeah.
But then the sitter would carry on and something would change.
Mm.
And what's great is we were there with Pierre and Patrick, who are both just
So
deeply
far down that path.
in,
Yeah.
yeah, so far down that path. So their energy carried in a lot of ways.
Mm.
And then the texts are written in a way, but it really, it's not, it felt so real, but it was inclining you to the Dharma. It was inclining you to
Mm.
that energy. But as not only if you read it, but if you were listening to it, you would start to just go into these deeper states.
Mm.
And at first, it wasn't super deep, but as the month went on, I would really start to want to be there, and
Yeah.
I would actually really enjoy reading
Mm.
it, specifically Anathapindika Sutta. Six sets
Yeah.
of six was still a little tricky, but Anathapindika
Yeah,
Sutta
45
was
minutes into the Jataka
amazing.
Sutta of six sets of six, you're like, dude, I have 20 more minutes of this. That's crazy. And if you remember, the main state I was getting into at the start was frustration. So much so that
Mm,
sister, being so out of it, I was reading it and she was like, "You're rushing it," and I was like, "Yes,
right,
sister."
yeah,
So I had to really slow that down. Um, but that was, yeah, like I just remember not really being able to describe that experience, but knowing what it meant. For me, the
yeah,
easiest way I have to describe it right now is anicca, impermanence. Like one of the three characteristics, and therefore by definition, all of them, was just so pierced through to this day. There is no
mm,
illusion that I have that this time is limited. And, it still comes up every once in a while, but at the start, I used to have a lot of fear around that, because when death is really, really like staring you in the face, you know, you don't realize how much like of blissful ignorance that your mind almost protects you from. But
yeah,
as you get more exposed to it, your courage grows as well. And if your courage grows in the face of death, am I saying that like if someone like pulled a gun on me, I wouldn't be like scared? Of course, I don't mean it like that. I mean it in the sense of just accepting mortality. If you can accept that, which is the greatest fear I think we all have, almost all fear comes back to like the fear of being dead or like no longer being here. I just think that, or I know that that just adds to courage to all areas of life. That was the turning point for me in this period. Was that the same for you? I know we've talked about it actually. It's been similar for you, right?
absolutely. That period was
Mm.
two things. It was a real reality check of like the idea of death became real
Yeah,
where it wasn't before.
yeah,
And also, it's not truly something that needs to be feared because of the way we saw Sister go through it.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing that we
Without
haven't
fear,
mentioned. Like this whole
literally.
period since the diagnosis of stage 4 bone cancer, I believe it was, right?
Mm,
Um, from that incident to her final day, which we were with her, the final day, because she passed that later that evening. I think like 3 a.m., 4 a.m. So technically the next day. Um, nothing. not a flicker, like not a flicker
Not at
of
all.
fear or doubt. There was confusion, like why am I here? So there was like more like confusion, like that people get kind of when they're on their way out.
Yeah,
But in terms of actual like when she was lucid, nothing. Like it's the craziest thing I think I've ever seen in my entire life. You know?
yeah, absolutely. There was zero fear. And I think that got taken on by us in many ways because
Mm.
it started to change the experience. Because not only did she have zero fear, but Bhante Dhammikavesi
Oh.
didn't speak about it in any way other than she's just moving on to the next stage of experience,
Mm.
right? Like it was only that. And he never created any storylines of fear or there was a natural sadness of losing someone we care for, but not a sadness of it's in any way an end for her,
Yeah, of
if
holding
that makes
on
sense.
or something
Yeah,
like
or
that.
like death is
Yeah.
bad or something like this.
No.
And so with his guidance,
Yeah.
we were able to do this every day. We read it, and I think not only did we read it, but we started to embody that state.
Those
And
passages.
especially that first month she was there with us. But then as we moved into the second month, she
In a
slowly fell
coma.
into a coma.
Yeah.
And it was just us reading it to her
Yeah.
without her receiving. Well, she was receiving, but without it receiving in any active way.
Mm.
And there's a period right at the end that I want to touch on, but is there anything that's coming up in that middle section that you want to bring up
Yeah.
before we go into that?
Yeah, the middle section, you literally couldn't make this stuff up. Like it was just right on the cusp of her becoming permanently into a coma. And Pierre's actually reading or reciting the passage that we started this section off with. May suffering ones be suffering free. And he stumbles over the words, and she kind of opens her eyes one last time and like kind of like reaches for his arm and says, "You're doing that wrong. You're doing that wrong." Right. And he's like, okay. He's like, do it with me, do it with me. And they do it together so that Pierre says the words correctly. And then that for me, from what I remember, is the last time that she said anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Her literal last words were teaching the Dharma,
Yeah.
and that was the best last words I think she could have had because that's what she spent her life doing.
Yeah.
And that was maybe that was a few days before she finally passed away.
Mm.
And I just remember we would continue with the process, reading the suttas, helping her incline towards the Dharma. And then on the final day, 'cause she went in the night,
Yeah.
I can't remember, there was just a acceptance that I think
Mm.
emerged in a weird way with Dhamma.
Yeah.
I can't remember if I'm making this up or if this is something that happened, but I remember something happened the day of where I was like, oh, I think it happens tonight.
Yeah.
Am I making it up? But I do remember
I
thinking
can't remember
something
that.
happened like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe you did on your own. I remember walking into that room because we got the call from
Mm,
Gus, the guy who runs that hospice. Great dude. I really liked him. Um, and I just remember just being in a state of just limbo because the body's
yeah.
there. Now they put a cover over it, but the body was just like so small, because all the air goes
Yeah.
out of the body first, you know, which makes you just I mean, we talked about this actually on our first podcast we did together, and it just really solidifies that you are not the body. How can you
Yeah.
be that somebody who was sister a few hours ago, you now look at and you're like, that's not sister anymore. Like there's a visceral
No,
difference. Like the
absolutely not.
body's just like a vessel. Um, I said this joke the last time. I go to take the blanket off because I thought like we were supposed to look at the body or something to check if to check if I have no idea. To like check if it's her or something, and like Pierre and Karen are like, no, you know.
Yeah,
I don't want to see that, which is fair enough because just looking at that body gave me like vertigo. Like it felt like I was really wobbly, you know? Like it felt like
yeah,
I was on stilts and I just like was wobbling around. But that was the end of our chapter with Sister Kama. You know, not the end of this chapter, but the
yeah,
end of our chapter with Sister Kama. And then we, you know, take her to get cremated. We still have a video of us chanting to her, her body before gets cremated. Got the ashes to Dharmasuka just in time, so now it's in the same. What do they call it again? Like the stupa, the same stupa as Bante Vimalaramsi, what she would have wanted to be with her teacher. Yeah, did you have anything that's coming up there?
yeah. I mean, I think it was the whole experience was just. I mean, I think the word that comes up for me is grace. Like it was
Mm,
gracefully
gracefully done.
moving on from life into
Yeah.
whatever's next as a Buddhist perspective on what's next, but who knows?
Mm,
And I remember me and my girlfriend, you because we had the ashes in the house with us, right? You were in the same house
oh
actually,
yeah,
because you were
I
in the
forgot
other
about
room. I
that.
was in that room,
Yeah.
and I had a dream, but I don't dream that often, and it felt very weird, very strange dream. And I had a dream that sister, like I just felt I didn't see sister, but I just felt that it was sister. She just
Mm,
came round to the side of the bed, and like that was the dream. And I woke up in the morning after having this dream, and the first thing my girlfriend says is, "You never guess who I had a dream about." And I was like, "Sister?" And she was
yeah.
like, "Yeah."
Wow.
And she described basically the same experience. And I just remember feeling after that like there was a sense of goodbye
Mm,
to sister for for what she'd had in her life. And actually, this is a big part of it. It wasn't long after this that the company that we were all a part of
mm.
dissolved, and
Naturally.
me, you, Pierre, and Patrick went on our separate adventures.
Mm,
And I think in many ways that was what it was, that we were there thinking we were there for running a business, but in reality we were there for sister, and she was the glue that held it all together.
yeah.
And so when she was gone, she passed on to her next adventure.
Yeah.
So
It's
did
the same
we.
way that we passed on to our next adventure. I think that's a great place to kind of leave it, and we'll get into our next adventure next week podcast. And I will link the next podcast, I believe, over here. We'll see if that's where it's going to be. Obviously, when the week that this podcast comes out, there's not going to be a link because the next podcast isn't going to be there. But I've got all of Cameron's links in the description and the comment below. Go and check his stuff out. That's all from me.
Same here. I'll try and do the thing as well.
Yeah,
And I put Aaron's links down below if you're watching on my channel. Check him out. And the story will continue in the next and final one.
perfect. See you guys then.